everyone. From me, Brent Graham, Thursday night time for the Handicap Rugby Chat that matters. Lots of quality rugby to talk about today. And I must say, I was caught a bit off guard. I didn't realize we're going straight into the Heineken Champions Cup semi-finals. So great to be able to chat about that. We've also got Super Rugby, a bit of Currie Cup. I think there's a single URC game, maybe two. We'll touch on that at the end of the show. But really some good stuff to talk about. And joining me, well, I brought in the boys. Whenever we put these boys on the show together, they seem to strike fear into the heart of the bookmakers. So let's introduce them. I'll start at the bottom of the screen. Chad, good to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for welcoming me back, Brent. Neil and I are making a bit of a habit of going on to the show together. I'm sure one time in the coming weeks we'll be split up. But yeah, hopefully we can strike some further fear in the hearts of the bookies after the show.
Yeah, certainly. We don't want to break a winning combination. I think you were just saying before we came on air, your mom's quite a big fan of the conductor, you were saying.
Or she's a fan of the show, whether it's the fan of the conductor on the show or one and the same thing or not. So that's up for a debate. But to be honest, I wouldn't be able to blame her if she was.
No. I guess it is dragging you there as well. Neil, welcome to the show. Thoughts on sports? What sort of punting form you been in, Neil?
No, Brent, I don't want to speak too loudly in case the bookies are listening, but red hot form my side. Took a bit of when I say a break, it just wasn't too involved last weekend. Had a bit of personal commitments, had an exam to write, so all attention was on the studies last weekend. So it was a good thing for the bookmakers last weekend. So keen to get out firing. I've looked at the lines, a couple of strong fancies my side, especially in the Currie Cup. I think there's some fantastic matchup there. It's been a bit of a difficult competition to punt on so far this season. A couple of sort of iffy results, a couple of total overs which I've been on, which have landed or sort of missed it by a point or two, but some fantastic rugby, Super Rugby into the business end of the competition, Champions Cup semi-finals. So yeah, keen to get cracking.
Excellent. Yeah, looking forward to getting into it. Just welcome to the boys on the live chat, Alex, Dino, and Mark. Mark sent me a Twitter message just before this saying these early mornings in Bali are killing him. He gets up at like 3 in the morning to watch the show. So thanks a lot, Mark. Really appreciate the support there. And yeah, looking forward to getting into the betting. And let's go straight into Super Rugby. Where's my banner? There's Super Rugby Pacific. And the first game we've got, and Neil, we'll start with you. Highlanders up against the Western Force. And I've got a handicap here of 16.5 at Sunbet.
No, Brent, off the bat, I do like the force to cover. Highlanders, I don't care what they did last weekend in Brisbane against sort of a depleted Reds outfit. They're a poor New Zealand side. And I just think that the bookmakers have handed them a bit too much respect here. It is a bit nerve-wracking as a Force backer here that the game's getting played under the roof at Dunedin. But I just hope that the Force sort of play in true Force style, hog possession, absolute possession merchants there. They're quite poor in the final third in converting it to points. But I just think that if the Highlanders look to sort of show a bit too little respect for the Force here, hopefully try to play a bit of a loose game, I think it could play into the Force's hands here. I think Tony Brown doesn't just has no idea what his best backline is at the moment. They've shifted Sam Gilbert back into, well, when I say back, in first time into the 10 jumper. He's an out-and-out wing fullback, electrifying pace, but I'm just not too sure how he'll be able to sort of marshal that Highlanders pack around. Is quality in there. Billy Harmon, fantastic player in the loose for the Highlanders. Macaroni Tuo is also a very dangerous ball carrier at 8. But this Force side is just a very, very settled side. Obviously, got undone by the Crusaders last weekend, but that was always going to happen with the big Scott Robertson bounce back after the Waratahs upset the previous week to that. So at 16.5, I just think that this is handicap's a bit too heavy at the moment. This is a 12.5 point game for me, so I'm happy to take a bit of the Force plus first up on a Friday.
Interesting. I handicapped this game. I see on the Good for the Game forum at 16.5, but I take fair comment. I was also leaning towards the Force. What are you going for your Chad?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Neil. Soft play on the Force plus here. I just feel like, as Neil alluded to, Brown doesn't know his best combinations. I think he's struggled with Mitch Hunt, Marty Banks, who to play at 10. There's no recognised place kicker. Not that Mitch Hunt could be considered a recognised place kicker over the past few weeks. But yeah, accompanied with Landers being very inconsistent and arguably the worst, well, definitely the worst New Zealand side in the competition this year. And then when you look on the other side of the field at the Force, they showed a few good glimpses early on. There were a few big names in the pack: Isaac Rodder, Jeremy Thrush, experienced heads. So I believe they can string it together. And as Neil said, they have the elements of consistency about them this week. And yeah, given the some of the losses that they've had this season, a lot of them have been a lot narrower than you think. So to go, I know it's under the roof in Dunedin, but to go to the Highlanders with more than 2 converted tries, head start, I think you have to take the Force on the plus 16.5 here.
Before we move on to the next game, I'll ask you guys both quickly, starting with you, Chad. Total points line, 56.5. Anything stand out for you there?
Yeah, I think that would, 56.5. That makes Brumbies Landers 36.5, maybe a bit more.
I'll give you their line now. Let's have a look. I'm on player bets, and they've got so many different points lines. Home total points 36.5, spot on.
Yeah, I could potentially look at the Landers unders. 36.5 does seem steep. I think the Western Force, with their consistency and such, could hold them out. But yeah, if I were to punt on the point signs, it may have a small number on the Landers unders, because I just don't see them scoring that many tries with Gilbert pulling the strings at 10.
And I guess, Neil, if you're looking at the Force plus, then you're probably thinking unders in this game, as you say, hoping they hold possession for long periods.
Yeah, spot on, Brent. So the other sort of angle I'd go for is the classic game of two halves in the New Zealand game. If it's sort of a tight first half, sort of a 12-6 to the Landers at halftime, I'd look to pull the trigger on an overs at about 46, 47.5. But then again, if it sort of screams into life, you've got a 21-14 at halftime, 35 points in the first half, I'd look to take sort of an under 65.5 in play. 57.5 gut feel. I mean, it's one of those rules you never want to take unders when the Landers are playing, especially under the roof, because the conditions are superb. But this is a poor Landers outfit. 57.5 is the sort of line you'd get when they play against other opposition, which do tend to cross the whitewash. I can't say that too much about the Force. So gut feel just says that I would take unders at that. Not a strong fancy, because I just feel like you're always going to be nervous, and I don't feel like that sort of stress at 9 a.m. on a Friday morning. So it's probably one I would look to leave. Look for the game of two halves. Tiny nibble if you really are feeling up to it on the Landers unders, and leave it at that.
Yeah, I must say, these days I'm always too busy on a Friday morning to really get too involved in the games. But I can remember the days I used to lock myself in one of the offices at work, and I used to have the walker and I had the work laptop, my personal laptop, and the walker, and I used to watch Super Rugby while I was like on a call somewhere in there. But yeah, those Friday morning stresses, I haven't had them for a while. Neil, we're going to stay with you. Go to the next game. It's a Brumbies plus 6.5 against the Crusaders. I know Southpaw came when the minus 3.5 or Crusaders came. He went for it on the forum and on Twitter. And there's a few guys who followed him. Were you one of those to get on the minus 3.5?
Yeah, Brent, I was quick off the blocks into that minus 3.5. Even before team news, I just sized this game up. Tight fixture. Crusaders sort of kicked into gear last weekend against the Western Force. I knew they were going to be rolling out the big guns for this fixture. But no discredit to the Brumbies here. They've been superb against New Zealand opposition. Claimed 3 scalps so far in the Hurricanes, Highlanders, and the Chiefs. So big credits to them in sort of overturning their Super Rugby Pacific form this weekend. But I just think that at 6.5, Crusaders kicking into gear, that's a seriously strong 23 that the Crusaders are putting out. Brumbies are missing Rob Valentini, who's been instrumental in sort of the forward carrying there. He's loved crossing the whitewash for a try there. And then you've got Noah Lalesio, who not a big fan of him at international level, but he's quality at domestic level. So a bit of a change there. Rob Leota starts into the number 10 jumper there. So a bit of problems for the Brumbies there, and it's not the best time to get to sort of run into problems against a quality Crusaders outfit. And I just looked at, if you got Lester Fayango Nuku on the bench for the Crusaders, they must have a seriously quality backline that they're throwing out here. So at 6.5, still at those levels, I just have to be a Crusaders punter.
Yeah, I must say I missed the 3.5, but certainly tempted by the 6.5 there. Chad, I never forget setting you up the one time on the show when I was convinced you were going to rubber stamp it, and you went the other way. But I'm convinced you're going to rubber stamp this one.
Well, actually, a few days ago, before the news about Valentino Lalesio came out, I was quite bullish on the Brumbies plus. I went in on the plus 4.5, which I'm still not embarrassed to admit. But just to chat about the game from a more kind of rugby philosophy level, I think we've reached a stage in the competition where good teams have established themselves as good teams. I know Valentino and Lolesio have been instrumental for them in the back row and at 10. But I just feel as if the vibe in Canberra is good at the moment. They've got seemingly a good culture and a good structure there. They still have a lot of consistency from the team that beat the Chiefs last week. As Neil alluded to, they've beaten 3 New Zealand sides in and amongst the same way that the Crusaders did. And if we look at the Crusaders team of this year, I know I've said this before on the show, they're not quite what they once were. They are third on the log, but they have been quite inconsistent, having won only narrowly against the Canes and the Highlanders. I mean, I think it was like 3 or 4 points in both games, and they've obviously lost to both the Chiefs and the Waratahs, which the Brumbies, I believe, have both beaten. So I think we've, as I said, reached a stage in the competition where good teams are good, and I think we're going to see quite a tight fixture. Plus 6.5, I would still probably go for Brumbies on the plus, but if you could go back in time, Crusaders minus 3.5 with the news that Lolesio and Valentino are now out is probably the bet to go. But with a line near a converted try, I would tell the next person to probably stay out.
Well, Johan essays and saying Crusaders 1-12 there. Yeah, I mean, I just harking back to last weekend. It was one of those weekends, if you followed the preview picks, you did really, really well. I picked a lot of winners last week, but also was very busy and kind of in the end got involved in the wrong games. But one of the positives was Crusaders. I think it was over 36.5 points, and they look pretty impressive. I am leaning towards there on the handicap. Chad, we're going to give you first crack at the next one. Interesting one. Let me quickly, before I actually even bring you in, I'm going to go look at our handicap this game. I think there was some talk in the week. I was well out on this game with my handicap, Chad. I made the Drua plus 9.5 against Moana Pacifica, and they're starting, well, at the moment, it's minus 1.5. Yeah, it's quite a big difference between what I thought and what the bookies thought on this one.
Yeah, it is interesting to see that it's essentially a choice game. I also would have backed Pacifica to be the favourites. But the fact that it is even on the bookies probably suggests something that they know something that I don't. So an angle that I'll probably look to have at this game is a points line. Being played at Combank Stadium, Parramatta, the first time these 2 new boys of the competition are playing at it, Pacific Island teams, 7-star rugby. I think we're going to see a lot of running, a lot of speculative passes, perhaps 1 or 2 cards. I don't think we're going to have a very structured 80 minutes of rugby. So I'll probably leave the cap alone because I think the game could swing left and right far too much too quickly. So my kind of ideal thinking on this game is definitely a points line, and definitely overs on that line, depending on what it comes out at exactly.
Well, Mark reckons 50-50 game this. Neil, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, Brent. So I'm with you in that camp. I like Pacifica quite strongly here. For me, this is a choice game at best, if not Pacifica minus 2.5 here. I just look at this. The Druid love to play that sort of open and expansive game of rugby. Pacifica a lot more structured in their approach. Aaron Major with a bit of head coach experience at the Highlanders, thrust into the hot seat at Pacifica. They've been disappointing so far, but they've also thrown together some good performances. None other than last weekend against sort of a red hot Waratahs team. But I thought they conducted themselves quite strongly throughout the fixture. And I just look at the players that they've selected. I like Solomon Cutter in the number 13 jersey for Pacifica. He's had a bit of experience in Super Rugby with the Brumbies, so he'll offer a bit of experience out wide, especially in quite a crucial defensive position that is 13. And then Danny Tuala is always quite a destructive ball carrier in the 12 jumper. I like that they've brought Lincoln McClutchy into the 10 jumper and put Liliafano onto the bench. Big Liliafano fan, but he just doesn't sort of have that turn of pace that he had once upon a time. Bit of a journeyman nowadays, sharpshooter off the tee, but Lincoln McClutchy is definitely the future for the Pacifica going forward. So I just like what they've put together at a choice game, especially with an expansive side against sort of a more structured side. I just have to go with Pacifica here. Yet to win a game or competition, Drew have been off the board. I just feel like the motivation will be running exceptionally high in the Pacifica camp. Almost got the victory last weekend against the Waratahs. That was a good performance from them, and I think they'll put in an 80-minute performance here and see off the Drew. And I just can't see past sort of the Drew with a bit of lapse of discipline here. They've shown that they just love a yellow card throughout the tournament. I'm just saying that will come back to bite them in this tight affair.
Excellent. Yeah, so we're in alignment on that one. Welcome to Steph, who's joined the show. And let's move on to the next game, and we'll start with you, Neil. Blues, minus 19.5 against the Reds. Yeah, Reds, of course, getting undone last week. They did have a few injury problems. And the Blues, absolutely, I think the conductor was on the minus 10.5 handicap, the Blues, last week. And I followed him on that. And I think they were, 14-0 down or something. And they ended up comfortably cruising the halftime handicap and absolutely hammered the Rebels. So 19.5, Neil, what do you think of this cap?
Yeah, Brent, so when this fixture opened up, it opened Blues minus 13.5. I like that early doors. At Eden Park, I knew Reds had a bit of injury concerns in the pack, so I took a little bit of that. But this handicap's drifted a couple of points too heavy for me. We've seen what Blues are able to do with big handicaps bar last weekend. They're just a side which just tends to struggle with these. They could be their own worst enemy, all the excitement, all the attacking backs in the world, but they just sort of struggle to string that last pass together. Reds and with Brad Thorne at the helm, they're not going to sort of stand down to this Blues outfit. Reds looking light in the pack, but exceptionally stacked in the back. So that just gives me a bit of confidence if, as a sort of a Reds backer here, they can score tries from anywhere on the park. The likes of Geordie Patai and Hunter Paisami, they will cause problems for this Blues defense. And I can easily see sort of the Reds crossing for 2 or 3 tries here. So I would be a bit worried taking the Blues at the sort of minus 19, minus 20 level here. So I know I mentioned that I did take a little bit of Blues minus, but at these levels, I just have to be a Reds backer at plus 20.5 here.
Right, Chad, yourself, is this handicap a bit high?
Yeah, I agree and concur with everything you said. Yeah, the Reds and Brad Thorne have been a bit unlucky with injuries as of late. They were looking like quite an exceptional outfit around the time that they beat the Brumbies. But now they're coming into this weekend with Harry Wilson and Fraser McWright out, both from the back row. Fraser McWright's been awesome at the breakdown for them, and Harry Wilson has just been inspirational. I think probably their best forward of the season so far. As Neil alluded to, the backs are strong. We have James O'Connor and Hunter Paisami coming back. James obviously improved a lot at 10, I think, this season in terms of his game management and generalship. And Paisami is the type of robust ball-carrying centre who also makes big hits on defence and as a style of play that, one line break or one big hit can change the momentum of the game. Against an outfit like the Blues, who've named an incredibly strong side, leading the competition, the Reds definitely won't win the game. But I definitely think they will cover plus 19.5, plus 20.5. And as Dawson Sports said, with that kind of backline, you can expect them to score a couple of tries. So perhaps a Reds points line could be a play in this game.
Excellent. We'll move on to the next game now. Before you do that, if you are watching the show with a live or recorded, give it a like. And do subscribe to the channel. But liking it does help the channel quite a bit as well. So appreciate that. Waratahs plus 6.5. Did I go? I got your opinion, Neil, on the Blues. I thought for a second I'd skipped you there. Waratahs plus 6.5, Chad, against the Hurricanes.
Yeah, Brent, this game opened up at plus 9.5 for the Waratahs, which is something I luckily snapped up early on in the weekend. It's obviously come into less than a converted try, which is more of what I would expect to have seen it at, perhaps even lower than this. And plus 6.5 is probably something that I would still take a small nibble of. I know there's no Michael Hooper. Charlie Gamble's in his place. I know Charlie Gamble's become a bit of a cult hero at Leichhardt Oval, but he's also kind of played to match that kind of a cult hero status. Hugh Sinclair back at log to beef up the engine room. The backs have impressed as well, particularly Isaiah Paresi. He's been quite a dangerous ball carrier at 13 with some of the runs and line breaks that he makes, and he's no liability on defense either. Expect to see him and Paisami as the starting centres for the Wallabies this coming test series. The Waratahs obviously didn't play too well against Pacific last week, you could say. But I mean, in saying that, they did beat a Crusaders side with a performance at home that I think will carry them through when they play another New Zealand side at the same venue. We've said this on the show a couple of times. They're much improved from last year, particularly in their defense, and I think they can hold a Hurricane side to the plus 6.5. Just on the Hurricanes, I know they got Ray Arcee back, who's electric. Julian Seviers seems to be back to form as well. However, they've put Geordie Barrett back at 12, which I don't really back all that much. I don't think he has the distribution skills or the kind of creativity to unlock defenses from that position. I feel he's much better in terms of his kick receipts and so on and so forth, and he's punting out of hand and kicks for goal, much better suited at fullback as opposed to an inside centre. And I think he may stifle Bale Sullivan outside of him. So yeah, my go-to would still be the Waratahs on the plus 6.5 here.
Well, the Crow tips coming in and suggesting they almost had the wrong favourite. We almost thought it was the Oracle joining us there for a while. Got to make contact with that guy when I'm in Cape Town in a few weeks' time. Neil, what about you on this Waratahs game?
Yeah, Brent, similar. It's also snapped the 9.5 in the first opened up. Lechart ovals turned into a bit of a fortress for the Waratahs, and especially the form that they have been put out. Past seasons gone by, Waratahs have just shift points, but they've really just tightened up there, able to sort of grind the opposition down, play the game in the right areas on the park, and then just sort of attack when attack is necessary and just sort of turn over the points when necessary. But sort of at the 6.5, it has me questioning. I just scroll to the team sheet and I just look at one name, and that's Ardie Savea in the number 8 jersey. I just worry about the Waratahs here and how they're going to be able to contain him. I see that they brought back Geordie Barrett into the 12 jumper, so shifted him from 15 into 12. So they want him in the action on the ball, and that is a bit of a worry for me, sort of as a Waratahs backer here. So at 6.5, I think this handicap has come in sufficiently, and I'd hate to say it, but I'll probably sort of take the Hurricanes at these sort of levels here. I just think that the Hurricanes have put away quite a poor Drew outfit last weekend, brought back the stars in this weekend. Ardie Savea raring to go. He hates a rest weekend. He doesn't like sort of these All Black protocols. He's going to be absolutely firing. He's going to cause heaps of problems for this Waratahs outfit. If the Waratahs don't sort of get up to an early lead in sort of the first 20 minutes, I think it could be a long day for them here. Too much quality out wide for the Hurricanes, and then just have enough quality in the midfield to sort of contain the threat that Izzy Parisi does pose. So 6.5, I think this might be well capped, but at this level, even though I've already got a bit of skin in the game on the Waratahs plus 9.5, I'd probably be leaning the Hurricanes to cover this.
Yeah, I must say, I'm also leaning towards the Hurricanes. It's very close to where I handicapped the game as well, but I do think they might just do the business there against the Waratahs, who I have been impressed with this season. Neil, we'll stay with you. Plus 17.5 Rebels. I capped this game at plus 15.5, so also pretty close here, and that is, of course, against the Chiefs. Where's the thoughts on sports money going?
Sure, Brent. It's exceptionally tough to make a case for the Rebels in this game. I think almost home ground advantage is a disadvantage for the Rebels here, because AAMI Park in Melbourne is just such a fast turf. So if the Rebels don't sort of rock up on defense, the Chiefs could absolutely run riot here. And I just look at this game, zoom out a little bit. Where do I think the points line will come out? Okay, probably at about sort of 17.5. 35.5, maybe even 20.5, sort of 37.5. And I just think that I can't see the Rebels scoring more than 21 points in this game. And I definitely think that the Chiefs will chalk up 40 points in this game. So 17.5, I just have to go for the Chiefs to cover this spread. I see that Sam Kane and Luke Jacobson are going to cause heaps of problems for the Rebels at the breakdown. And I fear for the Rebels, if they start to overcommit at the ruck time, they could be heavily exposed out wide, especially on turnover ball there. So the Rebels do have a couple of quality players sort of scattered across their ranks. Bit of a weak bench. And so, sure, it's just tough to make a case for the Rebels. I think for me, it's just Chiefs minus 17.5 or just no bets in this fixture, and look for maybe a Chiefs overs points in quite a high-scoring fixture.
Well, I was just going to say before bringing Chad in, I was going to say from what Neil says, it sounds like it's Chiefs or no bet, and then you said exactly that, Neil, and I have to agree with you there. I wouldn't be able to oppose the Chiefs here, that's for sure. So it's either go for them or sort of let it rest. Chad, you got a firm view on this one?
Yeah, I would have had a much firmer view if the line was 3 points less than what it currently is, which I believe is what it opened up earlier in the week. But money has come in for the Chiefs, and I would say rightfully so. From a Chiefs perspective, they're going to want to bounce back from last week against the Brumbies. In terms of the personnel that they've got this weekend, there's no Nankivore for some reason or other. I couldn't find out whether he was injured or not. But Brad Weber and Josh Ioane return for a 9-10 combination, which I think breeds far more a kind of attacking, running more exciting and expansive brand of rugby than what Brent Graham had championing the 10 jersey. I just think Brent Gatlin's more of a kicker out of hand and territory type 10 than Josh Ioane. So, as Neil alluded to, I can expect some points in this game as well. We're nearing the business end of the competition. The Chiefs are in a position where they can secure a home semi-final if they finish fourth. So I think that they're going to need to put or come away at least with 5 points against this Rebels side. From a Rebels perspective, absolutely ripped up by the Blues last week, somewhat embarrassingly so. They are strengthened with the return of their captain, Michael Wells, and the Australian hooker, Jordan Ulezi, I think his name is. But they are significantly rotated in other parts of the field. Obviously, some sort of crisis control after last week's blowout against the Blues. So, I don't see another result other than the Chiefs romping home. This cap is a tad big, but I expect the Chiefs to win comfortably, and we'll probably look at overs as well at the 36.5, 37.5.
The Crow tips here. He says Chiefs are getting over 40. What else happens in the game? He does not know. Gents, let's move on to the Currie Cup. Quite interesting. I handicapped the Currie Cup games on the Good for the Game forum, my regular Sunday night exercise, and I was actually pretty close to what the bookies say in two of the games and quite well out on another. So we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But one of the games where I was quite close, I said Pumas minus 9.5, and I see the books have got that sort of line, and we got you minus 8.5. And Chad, we'll start with you. The Pumas, very impressive last week in beating the Sharks. And can they roll over Province? I think it was a conductor said to me earlier in the week he would take the plus Province because he was expecting them to select a stronger side, put a couple of URC guys in. Have we had any team news on this game yet, and any thoughts on the cap?
We have had team news, and unfortunately no URC involvement in the slightest. I can understand conductor's line of thinking, but I think it will perhaps apply more to the Sharks. Reason being, I think because despite the fact that Province, or the Stormers rather, have sealed a quarterfinal spot in Champions Cup for next year, for the time being, they are essentially out of the running in the Currie Cup. So there's little motivation for them to risk any of the URC players in Nelspruit this weekend. So yeah, just on Province, it pains me to say how bad they've been, but they have lost 7 on the bounce. And Pumas at home, it's hard to trust the Pumas on such a big cap because when you expect them to score a lot of points, often they don't. But yeah, I just can't really trust this Province side in Mbombela on Friday to cover any sort of handicap around 8.5, 7.5, 7 p.m. on a Friday night. Morne Ferreira on the whistle. He was a new referee in the competition this year. I still don't know too much about him. But yeah, I'd probably look at a points play on a Friday night.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I must say, yeah, I'm looking at this and going, gee whiz. I know, we always say the Pumas, you back them when they're underdogs, when they're favourites, they maybe don't deliver. But I'm looking at this and going, I like the Pumas here on the handicap at minus 8.5. What's thoughts on sports got for us?
Sure, Brent. I hate to burst the bubble here, but I quite like Province to cover, and I'll definitely look at a Province points line. Hopefully, it's about 23, 24.5. I'll strike that just for a couple of reasons. The Province side would have been training with the Stormers this week, and I just feel like a bit of positive energy with the way the Stormers have been performing all season would have revved up into the camp there. Province winless in 7 fixtures, bit of a torrid run for such a proud union here. They have brought Junior Pokamela into the 23, so he's coming off the bench, and I expect him to be introduced quite early on. He'll be a massive star in this Province outfit, and I expect him to cause a couple of problems for the Pumas. And just as you hopped on, the Pumas are just awful to back, sort of as favourites. I like to say whenever it's a choice game between the Pumas and the Griquas, I always like to put my money on Jimmy Stonehouse, but Jimmy just doesn't like to return the money back to me. So at these sort of favourites here, Pumas minus 8.5. Yeah, the game's at Mbombela, it will favour them, but I just can't make a case for them sort of as a more than a converted try. This is a 3.5, 4.5 handicap for me against Province here. Province absolutely nothing to lose in the competition. A couple of very, very dangerous backs out wide, and the likes of Sergio Peterson and Tristan Lades. settled sides as far as Currie Cup goes. Tim Swill off the tee. He'll be slotting those threes all day long. So I expect Province to stay in the game right till the end. I wouldn't even be surprised to see Province pip them and just get a bit of revenge for what transpired at Cape Town Stadium early in the season. So at 8.5, I just have to be a Province punter at these levels.
Right, well, that's brought me down to earth with an absolute bang. And the Crow Tip saying Province. He's also on Western Province on Friday night in Nelspruit. Let's stick with thoughts on sports. So we got the next game, Cheetahs minus 14.5 up against the Sharks. And I think this one's quite close. Yeah, I'd handicap this game, in fact, exactly at 14.5. So no obvious value for me there jumping out. Neil, what about you?
Yeah, Brent, I like the Sharks quite strongly to cover the spread. Notable, it is an early kickoff, so that is a bit of a worry as a Sharks backer here. But Sharks just one of those sides that if they're favourites in the fixture, you just can't make a case to take them on any sort of minus. But as soon as they come up as underdogs or big underdogs in this case, at 14.5, I just have to take it. Sharks recruitment's been quite strong. They're going to have some quality players in scattered across the 23. I know what happened last weekend against the Pumas, but I'm not looking too much into that. I think that fixture has blown this handicap out by about 5 to 7 points. This is a 7.8 point handicap for me. Cheetahs have shown that they've been quite slow starters. Last weekend against the Lion were very slow out the blocks, sort of in the last 20 minutes. Ultimately, they pulled away, and that's a poor Lions outfit. So I do worry for the Cheetahs here in covering such a big spread. I look at their side; there's heaps of quality throughout that Cheetahs side. The likes of Gideon van der Merwe, absolute menace over the breakdown there. Obviously, got the cool calm heads of Francois Stan and Rowan Pino sort of commanding proceedings here. But against the Sharks outfits, not much to lose. Third in the standings there. Hopefully securing a semi-final berth. I think they're going to take the Cheetahs right down to the last whistle, and I can see a heap load of points in this fixture. So I'll definitely be looking at a points play if I can get the mid-50s here. But other than that, Sharks plus 14.5, I think it's just the right way to go in this one.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. I think the points could be the way to go. Certainly as we come into the South African winter and we get some nice firm surfaces to play on as well. Chad, yourself on this game, I was actually leaning towards the Cheetahs, but I must say I was going to wait until I had a good look at the teams, which I haven't done yet. What are you going for on this one?
I'm in agreement with Neil on this one, Brent. Yeah, just on the Cheetahs last week, I was kind of expecting them to put footy on the Lions in Johannesburg, which obviously failed to happen. And they also showed a bit of a leaky defense against a somewhat lackluster Lions Currie Cup side, which could translate into this week. I agree that the Sharks are going to come in all guns blazing, as we spoke about earlier, in terms of like some of the URC player involvement. I think having secured the quarterfinal spot at the URC for the URC and then Champions Cup spots for next year, and the fact that they are battling, or there's a three-way battle for the third and fourth in the Currie Cup with about 7 or 8 rounds to go. I think the Sharks will try and gun for a victory in this game. So to be minus 14.5 underdogs against the Cheetahs at league points against a Lions side last week, I have to take the Sharks on the plus here.
Right, Sharks on the plus there. Let's move on to the final game. This is the game where I had a bit of a difference of opinion from the bookmakers. I actually priced this at minus 25.5 Bulls, Chad, and I was a little bit surprised to see the 16.5. Bookmakers obviously impressed by the fact that the Lions did push the Cheetahs close last week. But really, this Golden Lions Currie Cup side hasn't been up to much. And I find myself leaning quite heavily towards the minus. Where are you going on this?
Yeah, I agree, Brent. I think as a rugby institution, the Bulls are just light years ahead of the Lions. As we've spoken about on the show numerous times, the Lions Currie Cup side has left much to be desired. They did show something against the Cheetahs, but I think the Cheetahs may be slipping up a bit towards the middle to latter half of the season. And I wouldn't necessarily read too much into this. It would be interesting to see what the teams look like, but I expect that this game could get quite ugly. And I'm definitely going to be on the Bulls minus at Loftus.
Right, thoughts on sports. Are you going to convince me to pull the trigger or give me some doubt?
No, Brent, I'm all over the Bulls this weekend. The Lions have sort of tried to be plucky in the last few weeks, sort of run the opposition close. But this is coming up against a scary Bulls outfit. We've seen sort of the strength that the Bulls have been able to put out in the Currie Cup fixtures. 16.5 here, sure. I just can't make a case for the Lions here. I think this is going to get a bit ugly for them. They're going to be competitive in the first half, probably at the start of the second half. But I just think there'll be too much quality on the bench for the Bulls. That's when sort of the depth starts running through to the Lions. If they're sort of 5 to 10 points down after 60 minutes, they'll look to their bench. They won't see too much looking back at them. And I just think that's when the Bulls are really going to capitalize. Jake said in midweek that he wasn't too happy with the way the performance unraveled against the Griquas. Obviously had a very strong first half performance and then unraveled a bit in the second with a bit of discipline issues. And he said to the boys that if you're 10 points up, you've got to have a crack at post. So I expect some massive scoreboard pressure from the Bulls here. They're not only going to kick to the corner and just try to bundle over the Lions try line here. I think they're going to knock up some serious scoreboard pressure. And that's exactly the kind of position I want to be in if I'm a Bulls minus punter here. So I expect sort of quite a professional performance from the Bulls here, and they'll completely dispatch quite a poor Lions outfit here.
Excellent. Looks like we're all aligned on that one. And that brings us to the end of the Currie Cup. We're going to move on now to the Heineken Champions Cup semi-finals. Some great rugby last week. Unfortunately, I didn't get to watch much of it, but I did get a bit of the Leinster-Leicester game, with Leinster getting out to an early lead and just never getting touched by Leicester. They're at home now, Neil. Leinster, they're minus 9.5 against Toulouse.
Sure, Brent. If I could make a case for the Champions Cup as to be a pure viewer from a couch and to keep my pockets, to keep my wallet in my pocket there, I would. But as the show goes, one has to form an opinion. So two absolutely cracking sides putting out here. Leinster, I mean, they're just the utmost professional outfit. Game getting played at Aviva Stadium. It's going to be seriously tough for Toulouse to go over there and sort of chalk a victory in front of sort of 40,000 screaming Irish fans in blue. But I just look at this Toulouse side, and at 9.5, the handicap just looks a couple of big, too many game breakers in that side. Renaud Alstad, he's a big physical presence for Toulouse. He'll sort of put a lot of pressure on that Leinster gain line. So if he can sort of get over the advantage line there, that sort of plays into the likes of Dupont and Intermac to free out those backs. They'll have to play in a bit of space. Two seriously intelligent footballers, just apart from their sort of attacking prowess there. They can put this ball in the right positions on the Leinster park. If they can sort of keep Leinster to a stranglehold and not sort of let Leinster get on the right side of the ref's whistle here, I think this fixture can go completely down to the wire here. So I understand the sentiment at the 9.5 that the bookmakers have presented us here, but I just have to take the French on the plus here. Toulouse love knockout rugby. Dupont and Intermac are serial winners. They just love these types of fixtures. They'll be completely up for it. Toulouse, they won't be short of motivation in their camp. And I just think that Leinster could be their own worst enemies in this game. Everyone's sort of chalking them in as an easy victory over a travelling Toulouse outfit, which has tended to lack a bit of discipline as the season's unwinded. But if they can keep that in check, sort of keep it to a 3-point game with 20 minutes to go in the second half, I think this could be anyone's game. So at 9.5, semi-final, I just have to side with the travelling French here.
Mark Dunphy, we know he's a big Leinster fan, and he's taking a rather conservative route here. Leinster 1-12. That should have any Leinster minus backers a little bit nervous. Chad, what are you doing in the first semi-final?
Yeah, like Neil, I also tend to stay away from punting on European Cup games where I can. But as he says, one has to form an opinion when on the show. So, yeah, I think it's going to be an absolutely cracking game on paper. Definitely the game of the weekend. When France and Ireland played in the Six Nations earlier this year, 13 players in the Irish side came from the Leinster squad, and 9 players in the French side came from the Toulouse squad. If you chuck in Alstad, as Neil mentioned, and Arnold and a couple of other internationals for the Toulouse side, you've got absolutely massive squads with high caliber rugby players. Leinster have been somewhat hot and cold in this championship. I know that they kind of turn it on when it matters, particularly in European competition. But I'm in agreement with Thoughts on Sports. I think 9.5 is just a bit too big, given the way that French rugby is going right now. I also think, despite the international influence in the top 14, the fact that there are 3 French sides in the semi-finals speaks to the intensity and the quality of rugby in that competition. I know that Munster last week took Toulouse down to the wire, and one could make a good case that Leinster would walk over Munster at this stage. But yeah, I just can't see a minus 9.5, despite being at Aviva against the side with the likes of Intermac and Dupont and so on and so forth. So yeah, small player with on Toulouse on the plus here.
I don't like going against the panelists, but I am leaning elsewhere on a couple of games. It could be an expensive weekend for me. I do like Leinster to cover the handicap there. Was very impressed with them last week, and just think that at home they're going to be a little bit too strong. But should be a cracking game to watch. That's one thing for sure. Chad, we'll stay with you for the next one. We've got a virtual choice game here. Racing -1.5 against La Rochelle.
Yeah, I think this game is -1.5 to Racing purely because they're playing at home. If you look at the log and the French top 14, I don't watch much rugby in the competition, but I think all 9 teams have a chance of making the semis, with a couple of teams in the top 4 actually mathematically a chance of missing out entirely, which is bonkers for some for a log at this stage of the season. And just watching the way Racing played last week, enigmatic players, Finn Russell, Teddy Thomas, was actually quite scary watching how these guys effortlessly played the game of rugby. I don't have too much of a strong opinion on La Rochelle. I know they put away Montpellier side quite easily last week, but if you supposedly had a gun to my head, I can't take, I would have to take rather a Racing -1.5 at home. The way they've been playing, the confidence that needs to be flowing through those guys, I think they will book themselves a place in the final.
Looking forward to this game, Neil. Do you think it's going to be a good one to watch?
No, spot on, Brent. Just to correct Chad there, the game is getting played in Lens, so it is a neutral venue, but I do believe it is closer to Paris. It's quite far up north in France. But I mean, it's just two complete contrasts of style here, and I always sort of like that matchup. Racing, the flamboyance that they do offer, littered with sort of international superstars across their backs and forward pack. Sorry, that's Racing. And then La Rochelle just completely just thrive on sort of pressure rugby, seriously disciplined side, watertight defense, just made for sort of knockout rugby. So two complete contrasts of styles. But for me, this Racing 92 side has impressed me completely in the Champions Cup so far. They just look like they've really just set their desire on just bringing this competition home. And in a tight fixture like that, in sort of, if this fixture is within 3 points after 60 minutes, I just have to make a case for the side with a bit more X factor in that. Racing's defense isn't too shabby when they're playing away from home, because obviously at home, fast pitch under the roof on an artificial surface. So playing away from home, their defense isn't too bad. I just think that they'll have too many game breakers for this La Rochelle side. I think La Rochelle will look to play a bit more negative rugby and kick a lot of possession away. And I think that could ultimately produce their undoing if Racing can sort of spark a 60-meter try from the counter-attack here. So at 1.5 choice game, I just think I have to go with La Rochelle and to set up a final with Leinster.
Yeah, I also like La Rochelle, I must say, on the board there. Dino saying your picks are not only aligned tonight, but your dress code as well. Good point. I hadn't actually picked that up. But then again, I'm not one of the more observant people around. Right, gents, that's the end of the Heineken Champions Cup. Let's just touch on the URC quickly. I think they have 2 games scheduled, but I've only been able to find betting for one. I think the other game, Benetton Zebra. I don't know if anyone's seen anything on that. But here we got Neil, and I'll start with you. I'm not expecting you to be too excited about this game, given some of the other fixtures we've got this weekend. We've got the Dragons +5.5 against Cardiff.
No, Brent, I'm just going to skip the handicap on this one and go straight to the points line. 54.5. I'm taking overs on that all day long. Some superb weather up in Wales this weekend. 2 sides, absolutely nothing to play for. Dai Young said he's going to look to produce some entertainment for the fans. I think that the ball could get thrown around a bit here. I don't think defense will sort of be on their guard. Bit of touch rugby on display. So I'll just stick to the over 54.5 there.
Absolutely love that one. I always enjoy it when 2 teams that with nothing to lose meet each other. The only thing is I've had some experiences over the years in my spread betting days where they sort of have so little to lose that they actually sort of make a lot of careless errors. But I think you're right. I think we're going to get points in this one. Chad, anything on the handicap for you, or are you joining us on the points line?
Yeah, I'll definitely join on the points line. Handicap, I will likely not touch. The Dragons and the Ospreys had an absolutely insane game of rugby last week. I think the Dragons were up 24-3 or 24-0 at one point and ended up losing 50-31. As you say, a bit of a dead rubber. 2 Welsh teams. You would expect in terms of how players were feeling at the end of the season, where nothing really counts so much anymore to throw the ball around. But I don't know, but the Welsh teams and the way they've been playing the season with the level of inconsistency and poor brand of rugby that they've shown at times, could be a bit of a flaky bet, but then in the same vein, you could also say that flakiness and kind of inconsistency could lead to an absolute mountain of points. So yeah, I would be leaning to a points line, or probably leave the handicap alone. But I do expect Cardiff to come away with the victory at the Dragons.
Well, just a reminder that I've got to work out a best bet. I didn't send a newsletter out last week. I probably would have gone Lions points. I think it was last week was my biggest bet of the weekend, but that was on Friday, and I just didn't have a chance to get that out. So we'll see if we can find some winners. We'll be sending one out. There's a link to subscribe to that newsletter down below, and also a link to the Good for the Game forum betting thread. Just before we get into best bets, have I missed any rugby? I know there's a Challenge Cup. I don't know if that's taking place this weekend, though. Neil, have I missed any games that you might have thought of, or do you think we've covered it all?
No, Brent, I think you touched on everything there.
Excellent. Well, let's get into the best bets then. And Chad, I'm going to start with you. What are your best bets for the weekend, please?
Yeah, unfortunately, the lines have shifted from the start of the week. So if they were at the levels that they came out with a few days ago, I would have more confidence in the best bets. But if we look at the current lines, I would have to say in Super Rugby, Western Force plus 16.5 would be the best bet for me in Super Rugby against a Highlanders side with Sam Gilbert at 10. I know we touched on it at the start of the show, but I can definitely see that landing with more surety out of the bets and the other point cap lines in Super Rugby. Another one to look out for, I think, would be Reds overs against the Blues at Auckland Park. And the Chiefs overs as well against the Rebels. In the Currie Cup, best bet will have to be the Sharks plus 14.5, plus 15.5 against the Cheetahs. I think what the game will mean to the Sharks and so on and so forth. And given the Cheetahs' performance against the Lions last week, I think that the Sharks will run it a lot closer than what the bookies think they will. Champions Cup, I wouldn't consider it the best bet, but the most exciting bets I think would probably be Toulouse plus 9.5. But yeah, I'll likely stay out of that and just enjoy it for the spectacle that it is. And then for the URC, obviously nothing I've seen on Zebra and Benetton. So yeah, it would have to be overs points in Dragons vs Cardiff.
Right, Neil, sum up your best plays for us for the weekend, please.
Sure, Brent. So on Super Rugby Pacific, I just can't look past the Crusaders to cover that spread. Love Pacifica to cover the 2.5 there. Then straight into the Currie Cup. I really like Western Province to cover that. I like Sharks to cover that spread, Bulls to cover that minus. And then in the Champions Cup, it is tough. These are almost international like fixtures. I think the bookies have nailed the spread spot on, but I do like Racing to sort of edge La Rochelle and what must be a very tight French derby.
Right, so those are the best bets of the panelists then. First of all, thanks to all the guys in the live chat. Always great having you with us. And then, Neil, to yourself, look forward to seeing you in Cape Town, hopefully in a few months' time. But thanks a lot for the show and a cracking weekend to you.
No, thanks, Brent. Good luck to all the punters out there. Let's hope it's a cracking weekend.
Yeah, excellent. Chad, hope you have a cracking punting weekend as well, and we send those bookies scurrying for cover. Have a good one.
Yeah, thanks very much, Brent. Have a good weekend, boys.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week, 9 o'clock Thursday night for the Handicap Rugby Chat That Matters.